Hey everyone, welcome to the Aeon 14 podcast. This is number 27. We made it to 27 episodes, which is pretty awesome. I'm James S. Aaron, and today I'm joined by Jen McDonald.
Hi.
Not Nicole Grotepas or Allison Stinnett, but Jenny Green.
Hi.
And our illustrious leader, Michael Cooper.
Howdy, folks.
Hey, there's Michael. So we talk about all things Aeon 14 and all things related, from the science behind the series to science fiction and other things that we think are cool or you tell us that you would like to hear about. So today we're talking about pets in space, which if you're familiar with the Muppets, you'll understand. But yeah, pets in space. So we can't keep our pets out of grocery stores and bars in the U.S., so you know somebody is taking them to Mars. Heck, animals went into space before we did. So, and there are definitely animals in Aeon 14, and pets. There are many variations of. So it should be a fun topic to talk about. We're excited. But before we get into all of that, let's do some updates. Michael?
Let's see. So this Thursday, the Empress and the Ambassador is supposed to come out, but it's probably not. I'm still rooting for a miracle. A miracle might still happen. I might get this done. But I was sick. The whole family was sick this whole last week, which was great. We all three of us had the flu, so it was just sort of just like, this is like one of those weeks you just want to strike from your memory and pretend it never happened. So needless to say, not that much writing got done. So I'm giving myself until the end of the day, well, earlier in the day on Tuesday, because Jen would actually need to edit it before she goes to Hawaii. Kind of a handy thing, because you go to Hawaii on Thursday, right, Jen?
Wednesday morning.
Wednesday morning. So we're probably looking at like a very slim to none chance that this book is going to be out on Thursday. So I'll have to figure out when it's actually going to make it out. It might not be out until a little bit later in March then, which bums me out because I've really wanted to get this book out for a long time. And I've actually got like this cool sort of romance thriller plot going on, which is, it's a story that I've never written before, like a type of story. And I'm actually having like types of character conflict that I've never written before. Jill writes this sort of character conflict all the time with lover spats and people getting angry at each other and stuff like that. But it's not something I've done a lot of. So
There are no guns involved?
there are guns. I mean, I'm like, it's me, and like, we gotta have a shootout here at some point, right? You know, so that all happens. There's even like a severed head at one point. It's good stuff. Oh, I know, right, Jen? You're like wondering what the heck's going on. Head's getting cut off.
Stuff.
So what's probably gonna have to happen is I'm gonna get as far as I can in this in the next couple of days, and then I'll table it, and then I'll be moving on to going back into the Orion front, which is book 9 of the Orion War. And that one, of course, is going to follow whatever the heck happens to Carrie after she's gone AWOL, and deal more with the aftermath of the assault on Eartha, which should be
okay.
What?
I just remembered where Carrie was and what she was doing, and I was like, "Oh shit, that's right."
Yep. Indeed. And then, of course, we've got Starfire. I don't know if I have I don't have it open anymore. If you're going to the group, you can see the cover for for Starfire, which is the 10th book. And Starfire was actually going to originally be the 4th or 5th book, but originally everything that happened after the Orion Rising and Starfire was never going to be a book. I was just going to skip over it and say, yeah, all that stuff happened. But actually, some fans convinced me to write it all, and I've sort of, in my mind, I've been considering everything after Orion Rising. So everything starting with the Scipio Alliance up until kind of right around Earth and Ascendancy has all been what I consider to be the alliances phase of the Orion War. And now Starfire is when the war really kind of kicks off in earnest, because there's a lot of WMDs floating around out there that no one's been using. They've been fighting a much more measured war, because I mean they have the New Canaanites, they have Picotech, so they can just lob Pico bombs wherever they want and just dissolve them. They've also got the ability to pull the things out of the dark layer, as they did as their last ditch defense of Carthage, and they now have something that I'm calling Starfire that they can use. And and the cover of the book Starfire should kind of give you a clue as to the destructive power of this. So if you've seen it, there's basically a planet being blown up. And Tana sort of has a, well, we just did that look on her face on the cover. So yeah, because I mean, something that I believe is probably the case is if you have, humanity's expanded to about, the bulk of humanity is about a 3,000 light year bubble around Earth. However, there are 10 million stars, not including red dwarfs, that you could live around in there. So you got 10 million stars, you've got 20 billion people around your stars, you have hundreds of quadrillions of people that are around there in millions and millions of systems. There's no way to really actually have a peace, or there's no way to end a war without having an imperial peace, which is sort of where I'm going at with all of this. So that's kind of what's happening there. Which is sort of sobering to say that, I guess. It's like, yeah, I guess what? Gonna be one of those, you know. But then there's a trilogy that happens after the Orion War that deals with how they're going to have a non-imperial peace. But first we have to stop the war. So that's where things are going there, which I'm really excited about. I'm excited to finally have someone say this station is now the ultimate power of the universe or something like that.
So the next Orion War book comes out in March?
March 7th.
Okay, early March.
Yeah. Yeah, so you'll be getting bits of it as soon as you get back from Hawaii, almost. I hope. So that's my plan.
Okay.
And then James and I have been discussing when we're going to release the first book of the Sentience Wars. I think we were gonna release it in March, but we might stock them up a little bit and release them. Get a couple of them done so we can. I think two reasons. One, so we can make sure. I think that the arc works well. And other ones we can sort of rapid release them so you guys can binge read as they come out, which will both be fun. And then, is it in April? It's in April that Athens comes out, or is it in March?
End of March. Yeah, end of March.
Already screaming by. It's insane.
I know.
That's so fast. Yeah. Yeah. I've been having a lot of fun. I'm over halfway through writing that, but I keep thinking of new interesting things to happen, and then I'm like going back and putting more chapters in at the beginning. I thought of some very interesting, nice stuff going on between Erin and Yusuf.
Cool.
As well as the family dynamic. And because this is the final book in the Building New Canaan series, I'm kind of completing Erin's major character arc at the end of this book. So she's going through a lot of interesting personal stuff, as well as fighting the unknown enemy. She doesn't know who the enemy is.
That's been the tricky part with this whole Building New Canaan series, is that none of the enemies can really be outed that well.
No.
Because the reader, most of your readers probably know how things are in the book New Canaan, which of course spans this entire period as well. And there's no one saying "aha," at any point in that book. So there's a lot of directions going on. It's been a fun challenge to write, though, and to tell the story like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed it.
And then I think, and then of course Rika is out in the first Rika book in her new series is out in early April. The first of the Genevian Queen books.
Yay!
And that book is written, or it's were you working on that one as well?
I'm started on that book.
Okay. Well, I think just the name is inspiring, so I could see that one being pretty easy.
Yeah, it's cool. Rika's got new armor, and I'm sure that most folks maybe not everybody, but most folks have read it. But the characters were all kind of pushing Rika toward taking control of everything, and Rika was just kind of like, that sounds like a lot of work, but at the same time, Rika doesn't like other people telling her what to do, so she's sort of a shoo-in for taking control of stuff.
Let's see. Anything new on the Patreon or Etsy or things of that nature?
Nothing right now. I'm actually I haven't uploaded all the cards yet to the retailer. They looked over the cards themselves and said they're good, but I'm working on the box. So today I hope to get the box uploaded to the people that are going to make the cards, And
Oh yeah, can you talk about that? So how is that process working? Like, by retailer, do you mean fulfillment type person that does the printing and sends it, or
yeah,
is there actually?
sorry, I didn't mean retailer. I meant printer.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna do 250 boxes in the first run, or something like that. So I'll get all of those things, all of those done, and then I'll get them all made here. I'm gonna try and figure out how to make a playing mat, because I mentioned to people that that might be an option to get like 2 decks and a playing mat. So I've got to figure out how I'm gonna get one of those who can make like a sort of like a the same kind of playing mats you get for Magic. So I think they're kind of like a thin neoprene that you can of course roll up and whatnot. So because obviously we know, those of us who play Snark, we realize, wow, there's a lot of cards all over the table here, and a map might help to actually know where they all go. So that'll be something I have to work on next. And then I am working on the next bit of the Angela story too. So that's going to be coming out as well. And then I swear I'm writing so many things right now. I need to probably buckle down and focus too. I'm working on Tanis's wedding, which is a lost story that never got told. Because Tanis just sort of magically gets married at some point. Wow, Jen, you are so excited about this.
I am.
So there's
For folks who can't see the video, Jen is just like super excited.
Jen's mouth became the size of her entire head there. Her jaw opened up so wide. It was quite amazing, actually. But yeah, so there's 2 things I've hinted at, and not everybody knows about. Well, everybody knows that Tanis got married, but everybody also kind of knows that no one was around when Tanis and Joe got married. They just sort of were just were just married. But everybody else was in stasis the whole time that they were married. And on top of that, I've hinted that Tanis and Joe were not on the Intrepid the entire journey to Captain Star. There was a period where they were not on the ship in that 70-year journey where the Intrepid drifted between those 2 stars. So that's going to be about that. And that's actually going to go into the new sort of extended Intrepid Saga omnibus, but I'm also going to release it to patrons for free. And then I'm also working on another story, and actually this one actually started writing like 2.5 years ago. It's a story with Tanis, Trist, and Jessica. Because there's a period where Trist was the governor of Terra, which was the second colonized world in the Captain Star system. So they're all actually hanging out there. Or actually, Jessica's there. Jessica's the chief of police. Trist is the governor, and Tanis shows up, and they have an adventure one night as well. So that's gonna be in there as well. So those are all of the things I'm working on. Jen looks really perplexed about this.
I think I'm misremembering Trist details, because I thought she was kind of like a thiefy urchin.
She was, yep.
But she became governor.
She was governor?
She was also the governor of the Terra colony, yeah.
Okay.
It was a rags to riches
You
story.
know, crooks can't be.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, it's mentioned in the book.
Okay.
But
I believe
you gotta think about it. It's like they're there for.
I really liked her character.
I was just making sure that I wasn't crazy.
I mean, you gotta think about it. At that point, it's been 50 years, give or take a bit, since Trist was a thief.
Oh, you mean people can change and develop and grow over time?
Yeah. Well, you gotta think about it. It's like longer than any of us have lived, give or take a little bit. I don't want to pin anyone's age.
Hold on.
Longer than almost any of us have been alive. So think about that. Like, people can change.
Okay.
Well,
I know. Okay.
And maybe Trist was like 150 years old already, and she used to be a governor a long time ago too. Just like Vargo Klen was a governor, and then he was a dropship pilot.
Well, I think part of the problem was she wasn't in my world for very long. Like I didn't before she.
She wasn't in anybody's world for very long.
So I mean, there's like, I didn't know enough about her, I guess. Other than people were really attached to her for some reason.
Well, I don't know if I've told you guys this before, but Jessica was the one that was supposed to die in Building Victoria. And Trist was the one that was supposed to live. But I spent so much time in that book because I wanted to make it hurt more when Jessica died. So I spent all this time getting to the point where everybody really loved Jessica. And then I killed her. And then Jill got really angry at me and told me I couldn't kill Jessica. Like, well, I guess I did a good job. I made her much more likable because Jill used to hate Jessica. So then Trist had to die. And then everybody's upset at me for killing Trist. which I guess is also good. So from a writer's perspective, at least.
But people do have to die in books. Even
Yeah, it'd be
nice.
weird if no one ever died. And I do enough of that already with my characters living forever.
It's true.
That's it. Those are my updates.
Those are your updates. Jenny, what have you been working on?
Yeah, so like I was saying, I'm halfway through Athens now, and having a lot of fun with all of the volcanic eruptions and earthquakes and the peter around Athens, which is the device that cools the planet. So I keep having to write to Michael and say, can you tell me a little bit more about this peter thing? But I'm sure he will fix it all when it goes to him. I don't think I've done anything, Michael, that you can't fix this time, but we'll have to see. I think I might have pushed the envelope just a little bit.
Oh, we'll
but
see.
I get it and I run with it, and then I think, well, if it doesn't work for some reason, he can just change it. So you're very welcome to change anything.
Usually it's funny. It's the things that you think aren't going to work that I'm fine with. And it's usually these other things that you're like, I didn't even know that was going to be an issue. I'm like, this is terrible. It's ruining everything.
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
And 50 different things are based on that thing. So
yes, that's what always works too.
Yeah.
Is like this one small underlying thing that no one would ever thought would be an issue, and it turns out that's the big problem.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a worry, but we'll see what happens. I'm sure
We've managed.
it'll be fine. Yeah, but that's my update really. I've just been working really hard on Athens, which is a lot of it is based on Taiwan.
Yeah,
The country of Athens, the planet of Athens is very much based on Taiwan.
oh, that's a cool detail.
Yeah. Hot springs, but Athens is quite interesting because I don't know if this is true or not, Michael, because I've made the kind of central zone just kind of almost unlivable because it's so hot and people are basically living at the poles.
Yep.
So we've got some interesting stuff where they're going like really, really close to the unlivable zone. So there's a lot of lava fields and volcanoes and really strong earthquakes. So that adds a lot of action. Yeah, fun to write.
Yeah, that should be that would be. And actually, the interesting thing too is that because they're probably mostly living north of the Arctic Circle, they actually wouldn't be able to see the peter most of the time either, or it'd be very, very low on the horizon. Oh, Jen, stop it!
I was thinking about how cool it was that if Jenny and her family had not had the courage to go live in another country, we would not have gotten New Canaan, which, is probably a different direction to go with the whole Peter conversation. But
probably would have got a different kind of New Canaan, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that's true of all of us, isn't it? That we all bring our experiences of life into the books. And
Absolutely,
the people that we know, and
yeah,
sort of
totally.
This is something I was actually thinking about after our conversation about a living wage that we had last week. Was that I've been writing, books since I was 10 years old, but without the life experiences I have now, I wouldn't be able to write very good books. Without understanding struggle and strife and pain and suffering and whatnot, my books would have sucked. And they did, because I go back and read the things I wrote, and it was garbage. And I didn't understand people and whatnot. And so that was actually something I was thinking about. Like if we all lived in a utopian world where we got to do whatever we wanted, and we didn't have to fight for it, we might actually create really shitty art, because we would never have had to fight to be able to even have the privilege to create art in the first place. So
does adversity create great art? I think hasn't that been debated before, that pure art should not require diversity or adversity.
Well, that sounds
but
stupid.
if we're all ascetics.
But I mean, so many artists draw from their pain.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
Make effective, evoking work,
And the best music.
Yeah.
You can tell is drawn from pain and from adversity and from real life struggle.
Well, that's what I'm
best,
trying to remember where
best
this argument
poetry.
came from. That's low art because it's not like purely working from the ideals of what makes something beautiful. I would need to actually like research where I read this, but I am a maker of low art, so
some people hang out in ivory towers too much, is what I think.
Yeah, exactly. Jen, how has your week gone? Or I guess it's been a few weeks since we talked last.
It has. It's been going really well. So as we already talked about, I leave for Hawaii really soon for that pool tournament. So I've been playing a lot of pool, which has been really good. And I've been kicking ass and taking names. So hopefully I can do that in Hawaii. I'm also planning my own birthday party in a couple of months because I'm turning 35 and I've decided I'm going to go skydiving and bring a bunch of my friends with me to go flying and jump out of a plane. So doing that. And let's see. Oh, I'm in the middle of rehearsals for a play that I'm going to be in. It's like a short 10-minute play thing that's part of a play fest where it's 9-10-minute plays focused around the same theme. And this one is Heart. And that's happening early March. Cool. And so we're about halfway through our rehearsal process for that. And I play an elf in a candy shop. And I have to talk like this the whole time. And I'm super excited. It's weird and dark and twisted and fun and funny. And we're having a lot of fun with it. It's just a 3-person cast. So it's me and 2 other people.
That does make 3. That's my experience as well.
Yes. So it's super fun. And I've been editing books, and I went to a networking thing yesterday, which was really cool. Met another author who is going to be starting space opera soon. And so he is going to be reaching out to me, which will be cool. And then I'm going to be editing another series about Valkyries, which I'm super excited about. So yeah, that's me. Business is good. Life is good. All things are good.
Sounds like you got a good balance going on there, Jen.
I know. I've been working really hard at it and finding it. It's great.
That's good.
Yay.
I feel like I've been more balanced this year as well, but I also feel guilty that I'm not pumping out like 3 or 4 books a month.
You need to be a human, though. Like,
it's kind of nice to be a human every now and then.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny I say that. 4 books came out in January, so I'm actually only like 15 days into a month that doesn't have 4 books coming out. I'm already like jonesing for putting out more books. Obviously, I have a problem. Well, there's at least 2 in March because there's Jenny's and there's Athens and
Empress and the Ambassador.
Well, that would make 3 if I get that one out. Okay. But there's the Orion Front and Athens.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then Empress and the Ambassador.
I think you can do it.
I can totally do it.
Well, Athens is looking good. Athens, I'm sure, now I've said that, I'll jinx myself, but I'm pretty sure Athens will make the deadline this year, this time. I usually go 2 or 3 days over, don't I? But I think this time I might just make it. I'm really pleased with it. I think it's really going to wrap the series up well and with a really exciting finish.
Nice.
I hope so, anyway. Oh, and I posted in the Aeon 14 Facebook group about the cocktail naming competition that I held when we released Galactic Genesis last year, and we had the launch party.
Yeah.
So I held a cocktail naming competition because in building New Canaan, when they travel to Athens, there's a cocktail bar on the ship. And so I wanted names, Aeon 14 themed names for cocktails. And I got this huge response from my readers and from the Galactic Genesis readers too. And there were so many that I felt really bad that I could only give out, 2 or 3 prizes. So I said that I would make sure that every single cocktail name that people entered into the competition would appear in at least one of the books. And I thought I'd done quite well, but I just checked today in the Facebook group, and there was at least one or two that I didn't mention. So if anybody's watching this and they entered the cocktail naming competition and they haven't read their cocktail suggestion in any of the books, then please let me know. And I will make sure that it appears in Athens.
Awesome.
Okay. Oh, we
That
have
is
a
very
baby.
cool. Yeah. Somebody does not want to be quiet, so I don't know if everybody was hearing that, but
No, we couldn't actually.
now she's being quiet. Yeah,
She's like, look, I see little people. It's
I
like
know.
watching TV.
Had slowly progressed from like growling to crying. So
Oh,
this is Lyra for everyone that can see the video, who is now being quiet.
I love the fact I mentioned this back when you guys first had her, but it's such an Aeon 14 name,
I know.
and I'm pretty sure that there's actually an AI named Lyra.
Yeah, it was T, one of the ones at T.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, and it came out right around the same time too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Let's see. Is it my turn?
Yeah, it's your turn,
Yeah,
James.
it's your
Okay.
update.
This week has been, just a lot of baby stuff continuing. But Stars the Hard Way, I would say, is 95% done. I'm really just finishing up kind of continuity things, and it starts out with probably 4 different characters. That Kara is the main character, and so I wrote her arc completely, and then wanted to add some side characters to get a bigger view on what's happening. And so all that kind of comes together in the end for a big kind of set piece battle. And then Michael still needs to write his piece, which is going to play into all that. But I'm pretty excited about it, because this is it's been a lot of fun. It's also got like some stuff that I did not expect to end up in the story that has been fun to write, and some new characters that I think are going to be a lot of fun too. So that's been the main thing. And then like I wrote a short story yesterday that was like an idea that had been bugging me a lot around augmented reality and ideas about like property ownership and augmented reality. And if somebody decides to like make an app that lets it so we can like have a troll on top of your house taking a dump, like what can you do about that? And the answer right now is nothing. Like, property rights don't extend to augmented reality. And could even be considered like First Amendment rights if I decide to like put that on top of a police station or a city hall. And so right now, like if you think about Pokemon Go, like everybody can look at things like that on their phone. But once we all get smart glasses, it'll become like there'll be layers for everything. And so if I put a layer, on someone's face because I don't like them, and if you're looking at them with the right app, there's really not, like, I don't know, we have to come up with new legislation to figure that out. So I know. So I wanted to write a story about that. So yeah, and it was actually good because it helped me figure out some things with like some additions to the book as well. So yeah, other than like not sleeping, I've been trying to keep everything else really good because I don't get a lot of sleep, and so I've really been like writing sprints are kind of just happening naturally because I grab what time I have and I write, and then I go back to doing what other things I need to do. So it's been very productive. Like cool. I feel like I have much less time, but I'm producing more work, so that's good.
That's sometimes how it goes.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if like more time
you think I'll have the whole day in front of me, so I have time to like mess around before I start work, and then the messing around just continues and continues and continues.
Yeah.
Like not doing so much.
Yeah, and then you realize that you've just wasted more of the day than you would have written anyway.
Right.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, or the week that just like blows by very quickly. All right, so pets in space, and I'm fascinated by this topic because one thing that's really been happening where I live is animals are just kind of everywhere, and like it's this low-level debate happening where people in the U.S. at least are faking this whole idea of a comfort. I shouldn't say faking. Like people are like they'll have an animal that may or may not be a comfort animal or a service animal, and they're sort of using existing laws to take them into spaces where animals had not previously been. You wouldn't normally see them, which makes me think a lot about like how people just kind of don't give a damn about the law if it means they're going to take their pet along with them. And ideas about pets have changed. If you look at retail sales around like pets, like people do absolutely view their pets as children, and the amount of like money spent on pets has, I think it's not even quadrupled. It's like tenfold what it was 10 years ago. Things that people buy for their pets. And so for eventually, if we talk about one-way trips to Mars or to, even further in the future, I think that pets will absolutely be there. But also the more we learn about intelligence in other species and cognition in animals, like, is it ethical to take an animal into space if they didn't choose to do it?
Is it ethical to have pets?
Is it ethical to have pets? True. Do they choose to be your pet? So these are a lot of interesting things I don't know. So within Aeon 14, at least in my own books, I wanted to get a dog in there. And so that was something that I think the fans really, really enjoyed. Although one thing Michael said was, as soon as I introduced M the corgi, he's like, nothing can happen to that dog. Like, you better not ever hurt that dog.
I laid down the law, like, that dog lives.
I know.
And a fan picked up on it too. A fan mentioned in a comment, like, this is now the safest spaceship in the solar system.
Exactly.
Cannot
Well, if
be
I
destroyed.
take the dog, but then I took the dog off the spaceship, so.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know, what are your thoughts? Am I totally off base, or does this seem like something that would definitely be a part of the human experience, early? And then what might, as we look at, like Jenny's been exploring, like genetic engineering and other things down the road, what might that look like?
Well, I was actually thinking about this this morning. I feel like the first colonists that ventured out would definitely take their animals, because they would be trying to take as much of their current life with them as they could, because they'd be venturing into, outside their comfort zone and starting a new life. And so if they had animals already, they would probably take them with them, either, to the detriment of their animals or whatnot. But I don't know if subsequent generations of Marsians, I guess, would have that same attachment to species that existed on Earth, because they'll be further removed from it. So maybe they won't, be as used to it and be.
Yeah, but think about the crazy breeds we could get on other planets too. Like, all of a sudden it would be like the Westminster. What is the big breeding show in
Westminster?
The Westminster. Yeah. Only that could be in other places where they might have very long limbs from low gravity, or I don't know. It could be all kinds of interesting things.
Well, I think Jen, probably like the very first colonists wouldn't take their pets, because there's a lot of weight restrictions on how much weight you can actually move from one planet to another. It's like right now, something like, I could be wrong, it's in the range of $10,000 per kilogram is what it costs to move weight into space. So, but
yeah, maybe they would just take the embryos.
They might, yeah. But I'm saying, like, you wouldn't take your existing pets, because at least the initial colonists, because it'd just be too expensive. But I think as technology improves and people start to spread around more, I think they would, like, okay, we're moving to Mars and we've got a dog. Of course, we're bringing the dog. We would bring the dog if we moved to Frisco. We would bring the dog if we moved to Mars.
I mean, you could have animal breeding on Luna, and then if they did like a secondary.
Yeah,
it all depends on what the window would look like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot cheaper to launch stuff off Luna than it is to launch stuff off of Earth.
Mm-hmm. Puppy mills on Luna.
I think people definitely would, and I think the main reason why we would end up with pets in space is this exact same reason why we have pets right now. The domestication of dogs was for mainly for protection, but the domestication of cats was to protect the food supply. And the Egyptians did it to make sure that rats didn't eat the grain. And I think the same thing would happen. And it happened like on ships, on sailing ships. They would have cats on the ship, so they didn't have rats, And I think that the rats will show up, with the first major shipments to go off to other places, and before long be like, bring in the cats.
I think it's actually less practical than that, though. I think that's how it might have started off. But I think humans have a kind of, one thing that makes us human is that we are really interested in other animals. Like, most animals are not really interested in other species unless they want to eat them. But we seem to love interacting with other animals. Like, we have zoos So many people have pets, even if it's just a fish or a bird or something. It seems to be a part of the human psyche to want to have other animals in close company with us. I think that's true of most cultures around the world. And the thing that springs to my mind in particular is the film Alien and Jones the cat, and how appealing was that to the audiences that she went back for Jones. She got out and she went and she got the cat.
Yeah.
And everybody said, yes, because that just touched something really, really deep inside us as humans, I think. So I think, yeah, absolutely, we will maybe make it not a priority, because it's obviously not a survival thing. But you're right, once we've got past that level of pure survival, then it's going to be our next level of needs, and part of that is other animals.
Well, I kind of feel like we need cats to stop the rats to be sort of like a thinly veiled excuse.
Well, I think there's
it's like, we could make robots for it, but look, the kitties are so cute.
I know. Well, there's also the psychological effect of, you think about, like, okay, if we're going to talk about economies of, the cost of something. Well, you send a crew up. There are studies been done into, how difficult it could be to have a crew that isn't going to kill each other across a long period of time. But if you have an animal that could potentially provide that same comfort, so the human doesn't go crazy, that's a real benefit to a long-term mission.
That's a very good point.
I really wonder too about the physics of it, like how, which you think about, like when dogs went up, they were strapped down and they couldn't move, like how quickly animals would adapt. And we've had a lot of discussions about birds and zero G, and like how everything a bird has evolved to use, like in their nasal passages and whatnot, like really doesn't work in space. And so like how that would affect the animal as well. Like could some animals just not function? Yeah, would a cat be fine? Maybe. I don't know.
Cats would be in heaven. Cats would be like, I'm climbing on everything. And they're like, sitting upside down on the roof staring at you, because that's what the cat would do,
I know.
And they would be tucked into like every tiny corner they could possibly get into. There'd be a cat in there.
Yeah, I think cats would love spaceships. I think they would.
Giant
hiding holes.
Right. Everywhere is a place I can look down on people. And
that's what I mean. Yeah, they'd be like maybe everywhere, like where do I feel superior? That's where I'm going to be. I feel like if I fits, I sits and everything.
Yeah, I feel like my dog would have a hard time in space, because he just wants attention to be on him all the time. And he wants hands to be on him all the time. And people in spaceships have like jobs to do and like things that they need to take care of, and they wouldn't be able to maybe divide their attention as much as he would like, so he would not be happy.
I mean, we would definitely need advances in, filtration and, hygiene for the animal, like how that would work. That would be kind of exciting to have little balls of urine floating around. If we're in a zero G situation.
I hadn't thought about zero G doo doo.
Yeah.
This is where cats are way better than dogs. This is like the one reason why I don't own a dog. And whenever Joe mentions it, I'm like, you know what, honey? I do not want to be involved in the daily defecation of another creature. It's just not something I'm interested in doing. If it no longer has diapers, I no longer have to be involved with anyone else's poop. This is a big benefit.
Yeah.
James is looking forward to it. Of course, James has a corgi, so James still has to be involved with other creatures' poop.
Yeah, he's pretty good about it, though. It's not. I've been pretty fortunate with that. Although our blind cat has led to a lot of, like, I replaced several floors because of our cat. Things finally work pretty well now, but it took a while to get the system down. But she's actually, so listeners know, I guess I have a blind cat that was blind from birth. And you wouldn't know that she was blind because she has overcome, like she has all these other faculties she uses, So I think about cats, like between their whiskers and their hearing and, all the things that they would be able to do. to navigate in that environment, I think they would be well suited to that.
Mm.
What if we have a bat?
Another advantage is that with animals, we can genetically engineer them to withstand the rigors of space more so than we can ourselves, because I think we can't really ethically genetically engineer a baby, because the baby has no choice in what's being done to it, you know, unless we're actually curing a child's disease. We can't sort of take an embryo and say we're going to make it able to withstand radiation, for example, so that it can go out into space when it grows up, because the baby has no choice about it. But if it comes to animals, we can say, well, we want to be able to have a ship's cat, so we will make it able to withstand radiation and tolerate 0G, and you know, we can do all
the
these
idea
things.
behind the Proxima cat, right? And
Sorry?
was that I think that was the idea behind the Proxima cat in Lisa's books.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were genetically engineered to survive better in space.
Mm.
But I don't know that I agree that I mean, I guess it depends on the person. I have just as much of an issue doing something against my animal's will as I would doing something against another person's will. I don't view it as different.
Yeah. Well, see, I think our ideas will change about that ultimately. I think you're right, like the idea of it being against their will. I think we kind of see this even now, where a capability is seen like you're disadvantaging someone if you don't give them that capability in the future. So why wouldn't you do that if you could do it? I'm not saying that that's the way, like, we look at that and think that's being done without their consent, but in the future I think people could look at that differently.
Well, it also depends. Like right now, it's a crapshoot with genetic modification. We have no idea. We don't really know what we're doing that well yet. We don't know what the ramifications are. But far enough in the future, we would know what the ramifications were, and it may also, a lot of things might be reversible too. So once things become reversible, then the modifications you can make the ethical choices become a lot easier, because you're like, well, it's not a big deal. Because there's always a scale of things. There's like, you know, how much effort does it take to undo it? You know, how much cost, how much time? It's the same sort of considerations you take when doing any sorts of project. And anytime reversal becomes trivial, then the decision almost always becomes easy to do. And no one's that worried about it, because like, oh, you don't like it, you just undo it. You know, just hit the big red button. So I think that sort of thing, and that's, you know, further on in Aeon 14, that's the way it is. They have the technology to undo just about anything, so no one's really that concerned about hacking off a limb and replacing it with something else, because, you know, a couple of days from now you'll be hale and whole again. It's that messy middle period we're going to have to get through first. That's going to be pretty bad, and we're going to learn a lot of ethical things. But the thing you're saying about Jen about whether or not it's the creature's choice to have something done to them, whether it's a human or an animal, I agree with. But, and I made a statement about this before, is that even the concept of keeping pets,
right,
is actually, if you want to take a really strong moral standpoint, it's unethical to have pets at all, because you are effectively caging these creatures against their will. And many of them want to be caged because they don't know anything else. And you can do the same thing with a human too. You can raise a human in slavery. It could be a gilded cage. And you'll find a lot of humans that won't actually want to leave that gilded cage. And history is just completely jammed with these examples. Now there's scenarios too where, of course, people were brought up in slavery and did want to leave, and usually their cage was especially ungilded in those cases as well. But that's actually why I don't believe in largely keeping birds and fish, because I feel like the cages you have to keep these creatures in are so small and so oppressive. That you are probably actually doing psychological damage to this creature by forcing it to live like this, especially birds, because apparently a lot of birds, like, they mate for life and they view the human as their mate. So unless you pay them like ridiculous amounts of attention, they are just ridiculously depressed. So there's stuff like that. So that's one side of the argument, that basically any type of pet is effectively enforcing slavery on another creature. But the other sort of thing is, like, everybody is in a cage of some sort, you know? All of us humans are in a cage. We're in a cage made up of our social status, our economic status, the country that we happen to be born in, the body that we're born in. You know, I can't leave planet Earth. I'm trapped in this Earth-sized cage. It's terrible. You know, I can't leave my body. I'm trapped in this Michael-sized cage. And so at a certain point, it starts to get ridiculous. You're kind of like, well, everybody's in a cage. And like, you know what? And any of this, none of us asked to be born, you know, which of course is a ridiculous statement because you can't ask to be born before you exist anyway. So everybody that in existence is brought into existence in a situation that may not be the situation they could have chosen if they knew everything. And of course, no one knows everything. So no one knows if any other situation would actually be any better. So that comes all the way back around to the fact that like, maybe it doesn't matter that we have pets and we keep them in our houses and we never let them out and stuff like that. I don't know. It's, but so if you can accept that everybody is in a cage of some sort, nobody had much say in the cage they got put into. Some people have some people have great say, some people have no say whatsoever. And there's not that much we can do about it. Then you have to start to ask yourself, well then, you know, so many of these choices and situations were they weren't made for us, because many of these things, no one actually consciously made these choices. It's just the way the world was. You know, the universe basically just doesn't give a shit about the situation that you happen to be born into. It's not its concern. It's busy building plutonium. You know, that's what the whole universe is working on. It's the whole point, just making plutonium. I guess it's making uranium-238. Anyway, where was I going with all this? I was going with the fact that basically, unless you're being malicious, you could make an argument that genetic modification isn't really a bad thing because it's no worse than the randomness that happens to any of us anyway.
Yeah, I think the reconciliation is that, like, in terms of making decisions for my animals, like I have to medicate my dog. He obviously doesn't get a say in the matter, but it's because I'm trying to do what's best for his body and like keep him with me as long as I can, as long as I feel like he's enjoying his life, you know?
Yeah.
And so because I think I know the effects of the changes that I'm going to be implementing, I'm like, you know, this is for your own good. Here, have a treat, you know, like,
yeah.
I am making decisions for him because I think I know the outcome. And in terms of like genetic alterations or surgeries or, I know, my cat's talking to me. In terms of like making those decisions for them, I think it's the same thing. Like I'm doing this so that we can continue our love and our life and our way of living together. And like, I know you're mad at me now, but it's going to be fine. Like, yeah. And so I think that's how I justify it to myself. Same thing with keeping my animals. Like, yeah, I could just open my door and let my animals go. Charlie would definitely come back to me, my dog. I feel like my cats probably would, but I'm also afraid of letting them out because I don't think they would last very long in the wild. I think they would die. So
they have shorter lives, that's for sure.
Yeah. So to keep them alive and, you know, mostly happy, I'm okay keeping them inside and with me, even though I know they're wild creatures.
I think what's really interesting is how as we grapple with the same questions ourselves, we will apply them to the animals that are part of our lives as well. Like these as ideas about, you know, consent and agency, and, you know, as we do explore, you know, manipulations of our bodies, and I definitely see us applying those same standards to our animals, you know, which is a reflection of our humanity, you would hope. Yeah. So
I hope that we do better than I think there's two angles too. Like one of them is if we're creating grotesque monsters that can't function and that live terrible lives, obviously that's bad.
We already do that.
What was that?
We already do that.
I know we do. I mean, the pug is the perfect example of that.
Already heavily genetically engineer our pets, and sometimes it's very detrimental to their health.
Yeah. Well, I'd say my prime example is the pug. I know there's people out there that like pugs and they think they're cute. I actually don't get it. I think pugs look like monsters. I think I feel like I mean pugs can actually like have coughing fits and have their eyeballs pop out. Like this is a thing, people. This animal should not exist. It's not a functional creature. My rule is like if it would die within a week in the wild, probably not something we should have made. And I know that sounds like a terribly cruel thing to people who might love pugs. And I understand that they're lovable creatures and people want them to do well, but we probably shouldn't keep making pugs.
Uh,
They're
They're
not.
making
snub
themselves.
nose.
Well, yeah, yes, yeah, exactly. Yes, they have breathing problems. They have so many problems, but they're such happy creatures, which is really speaks well for the animal. But they live miserable lives by and large, health wise. I mean, they can't jump on a chair. I mean, it's just terrible. I mean, corgis can't jump on chairs either, but they're way cuter. So
He can jump. Mine can jump on chairs. He's got a vertical leap.
that's
I mean,
good.
my family. Well, my brother had a pug, and I had a friend that had a pug, and also some friends that ran a pug rescue. And you're right. I think there are people that would get pugs, and then like the whole reason Portland has a very active pug rescue community is because people get pugs and don't realize everything that goes into raising a pug, and just like with any, situation where you're caring for something special or different, you got to think about that. Like the whole idea, yeah, their eyes popping out, that really weirded me out. but
Yeah.
but at least the pugs that I've known were pretty, snuffly, nice little creatures.
Yeah, they have great dispositions given their lot in life. I mean, it's
Yeah, I mean that's what's kind of amazing to me about like the whole idea of. I guess that gets back to like, yeah, whose idea was it to genetically like create the pug over time? It's like, have you watched the YouTube videos about the farm in Russia that's trying to domesticate foxes and how
Oh,
foxes change? Like all the things that make a fox kind of endearing are actually part of its wild side. Um, Otherwise, they just really pee on everything and yip all the time, and they're just not like foxes are very like they do control their environment in specific ways. Um, and so, yeah, I don't know. You wonder about that, and the problem I think is that the ability to do this exists. So it's probably going to happen. And like as soon as it can be done, it probably will be done somewhere.
that's the way it
Um,
seems to go.
yeah. I mean, if anything, hopefully we just live in a time now where there's more information and you can share. Like, if you went back in time to that person that made that decision back then, nobody really knew about it. So, I mean, now more people know about these things.
Yeah, and then hopefully maybe in the future, like in the Aeon 14 time frame, the problems are different for them because like, oh, we made the pugs and
Yeah.
they can't breathe that well. We'll just fix all those problems so that
We'll fix
this
it.
creature can actually function properly.
They
And
have
so,
nano reinforced eyeballs.
yeah,
A
make it
little
stick out. Like,
snorkel.
what was that?
Give him a little snorkel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, give them something, or at least better drugs, something like that.
Yeah.
But I do think, like, I guess the question then sort of comes into the play, like what about when you're modifying animals for work? Like the
Like
Intrepid.
like for a purpose.
Yeah, like you, I don't know, you want to make an army of apes to go do your mining for you on the asteroids. I mean, you could conceivably do that. In fact, that might actually be a fantastic idea. Don't send out the human miners. Just bump up the apes a little bit and send the apes out to have them go do the mining. In fact, I think there's probably a really good Aeon 14 Planet of the Apes Aeon 14 story waiting to be written at some point. Because I'm pretty sure the apes. I mean, apes are freaking smart. Although I really think I do feel like it's the dolphins we got to worry about because those guys are up to no good. I mean, dolphins they're violent creatures. Dolphins rape. Dolphins have sex way too often. Dolphins are like really mean to people that aren't in their group. Like they have social cliques and stuff like that. So they're also very nice in many cases as well. But dolphins are much like humans, can be real jerks in cases too. So I feel like dolphins are the ones we got to watch out for. And dolphins try to have sex with humans a lot.
It's less ethical to make animals to work when we can make robots that will actually do nearly. It's much easier and cheaper probably to do that.
Well, especially you're right. Once we get self-repairing, like once we get decent nano and we can have self-repairing robots, because the advantage with organisms is organisms are self-repairing. I guess one of the big things is just, I can't remember what I read it in, but it was this one story where this guy said, every time I do this, my finger gets stronger. Every time a machine does this, it gets weaker. Mm-hmm. Because our bodies, they're learning and they evolve and they self-repair, but a machine just wears down the joint. The more it does that. So, but once you get self-repairing machines, then that starts to change. But you could find that there might be scenarios where an organism could grow and replicate and learn and be effective cheaper than a machine.
One thing, talking about animal cognition, I think that the idea of having, as we learn more and more about how animals perceive and use their intelligence to solve problems, there could be resources out there that we're not using now in the way an animal might solve a problem. You think about like fine-tuning terraforming on a planet or things of that nature, that an animal could be really well suited to that. And it's like a resource that we just don't even use right now, or we actually kind of like waste it. Because we just don't know how to use it. We don't know how to I want to say exploit, but that's kind of the word, I guess, how to make use of it.
That might be an interesting thing too. Like we don't, one of the reasons why we don't get into like the details of terraforming too much is because like you could probably write, an Aeon 14 sized volume of books just on how you would terraform one world. But first thing you got to do, of course, is what a lot of people aren't aware of is that dirt is actually alive. On Earth is what's called the biomass, because if you don't have, like, dirt is like this loamy brown stuff, which is basically just worm poop. Otherwise you have sand and rock is all that you have. But you have to have worms in there eating everything and digesting everything and making worm poop to have dirt that other stuff can grow. And in fact, on Earth, pound for pound, if you made like a giant pile of all the earthworms and you made a giant pile of every other life form on the planet, there are more earthworms than every other life form on the planet put together, including all plants. The earthworm pile is larger. Basically, Earth is worms and other assorted things. But of course, the earthworms can't be too terribly effective without things like the ants breaking down all those leaves and creating ant poop for the earthworms to eat and then turn into earthworm poop. This is like super advanced biology we're getting into here. So you think about that. You're like, okay, well, we got the earthworms, we got the ants. Well, we need to have these other bugs to eat the ants. Well, those bugs fly, so now we need the birds to eat those bugs. And luckily the birds and earthworms. There's all the bacteria. There's the phages. There's all sorts of crazy things. So you end up at a point though where you have to build an ecosystem of some level of complexity to terraform a planet. But then you think to yourself, what if we could make them all smart? And it's not just chaos.
Terrifying. That would be terrifying. The idea of smart. I mean, ants are really smart as it is, as a colony. If they were individually smart, they would just take over the world. I was just this is sort of a funny off-topic thing, but every now and then you see people that get into ants, like, look at the ants. They have the hive mind. They do all these things. You see them moving in the pathway, whatnot. And then I just look at like a picture of LA with the highways and all the cars driving along. I'm pretty sure we're, at a species level, we're pretty much just like the ants. We have a big colony and we're all somehow miraculously working together most of the time, except for when, sub-colonies war against each other and stuff like that. But really, humanity as an overall species on the globe is basically just a giant ant farm. It's kind of fascinating. But of course, then your argument that they'll just take over and ruin everything might hold water.
Ants in space!
What we really need to be frightened of is the cockroaches. If the cockroaches became individually intelligent, they really would take over. They would kill us probably within a month or something, because they're unstoppable.
They are stoppable.
They withstand radiation.
You can stop them with one really handy thing.
Your shoe.
One what?
There's one really useful thing for stopping cockroaches. It's called winter.
Wow.
There's a reason why I like living further north, because the bugs are all very small and they die once a year. Like, I think I've seen two cockroaches in my entire life.
Yeah. You get them, they're this big here, and they fly.
Yeah, so people keep talking. Well, the ones I saw were flying. It completely freaked me out. I was in my garage, like, what the hell is this thing? It was a cockroach.
When I was in New Orleans, I saw a really big cockroach. I was like using a bathroom and I kind of look up at the back of the door and there's a giant cockroach. I was like, oh, hi. Like, feeling really vulnerable. But before that, my mom's apartment was actually infested with them. And I don't know if you know this, but cockroaches have a smell when there's enough of them. And it's like forever ingrained in my brain and like my olfactory memory, whatever. Like, it's awful. It's absolutely terrible. I never want to have cockroach problems ever again.
This is why when everybody always says things like, you should move further south, whenever I talk about winter, I'm like, you know what there's not out there right now? There aren't any bugs out there. No bugs. And I live near the ocean, which means there's no mosquitoes.
Yeah.
I have no mosquitoes. We have the only thing we have is like some flies. And we get the creepy crawly too many leg centipede things in the basement. Like that's it. That's all I got. And they're like that long. That's it. Those are our bugs.
I get weird beetles in my house. Rescued a ladybug last night. Moths.
Oh yeah, we get that stuff too. Moths and ladybugs. And
but I have a huge ant problem.
we do have we have 4 ant colonies in our yard. They do take some management.
I had to step out for a second. Are we talking about bugs as pets?
We got sort of we were talking a little bit about like bugs ruling in the world, and I said that winter is the best way to stop bugs from ruling the world. Interesting thing.
I got a little sidetracked. Not gonna lie.
Another way you
were talking about how humans are the ants of like the overall universal.
Yeah, you might appreciate this, James. Like people always talk about ants, like about the colony and the hive mind, and how they all sort of just miraculously work together. And you like see the ants. They always show pictures of the ants going along in these trains, you know, following the scent train and whatnot. I'm just looking at a picture of LA at rush hour. You know, it looks like the same thing. Like we have basically built a global ant colony.
Oh, I'm thinking more and more about like how social media and shared information and how we basically replicate the same images and mental kind of pathways based on our shared information is just turning us all into ants.
Yep, it is actually creating the hive mind.
Yeah, individuality is lessening and lessening.
I think if we were to terraform, we would have to take the whole kind of microbiome and the microorganism. We would just have to, because we don't understand enough about how that all works together to safely leave anything out. You know, we would have to take all the fungi, all the bacteria. We would have to seed the earth so that because plants won't grow. You know, if you don't keep the soil healthy with this range of microbacteria, we won't be able to grow crops.
Yep.
But what I'm wondering, you're talking about the northern winter. So the same as in the UK, that like we don't really have mosquitoes, don't really have cockroaches, anything like that, because the winter kills them off. But what we don't have that you guys do have is things like bears and wolves and mountain lions. And
well, you used to. You just killed them all.
You should take those into space.
Nothing's going to kill you. So I'm wondering, if we do terraform, will we take those animals that can kill humans? Will we take sharks? Will we take the wolves?
Well, the thing is, we don't. The thing you need the least of are alpha predators, because you could have machines do most of that work. You could just send out the drones to, you know, cull the populations if needs be. But I kind of feel like a lot of people are going to want to bring them anyway. You know, like there is totally a Jurassic world in Aeon 14. Which if they would name it properly, they would name it Cretaceous world, because that's what it should be.
Well, I think that it all comes down to how much data we have, right? Like if we have more information, like right now we're just at the very beginning of actually, and probably even then, like people will look back and say that our data methods now are just terrible and sloppy, and you know we don't have good methods of recording. But once we have 1,000 years of like recorded, you know, climate information about the Earth and animals tracking information, if we don't kill them all, I think that makes it much more likely that we could make real decisions about things like this, you know, when it comes to terraforming. Because right now it feels like anything we do would just be like throwing literally crap at the wall, hoping, you know, a plant will grow out of it. And it's not an informed way of actually doing these things.
Well, yeah, Jenny's right. Like what we'd have to do really, just if we were to go to Mars and we want to start growing things, we'd have to bring like healthy Earth with all the stuff in it, you know. And of course, we're learning all sorts of crazy things. Have you guys heard about the Wood Wide Web?
The Wood Wide, like plants that talk to each other? So
in the forest, they're actually like they're like thin, ephemeral, white fungal webs that connect everything in the forest. And that's actually how plants know what other diseases and whatnot are around. They actually communicate with one another through the Wood Wide Web. And as a disease is moving into a forest, plants can actually prepare in advance for when that disease hits them, or when certain bugs or bacteria will not come along, because they get the information through the web. And they've done experiments where they'll take potted plants and they'll have like holes in the bottom so that the connections can get made, and they'll have potted plants where they constantly turn the pot so that none of these connections can get made and maintained. and the ones that don't get turned are healthier than the ones that do, because they're less susceptible to disease and whatnot. So there's even stuff like that. Like we barely even understand how the dirt works. We're starting to finally understand how dirt works. Is what I guess what it comes down to.
Yeah.
But what we do know is that we probably couldn't bring enough dirt to Mars to have it work well for a long period of time, just because of all the stuff that has to be in there. And I don't know if are you guys familiar?
Are you arguing that because we don't understand the dirt well enough, we have no business bringing animals into space?
Well, I mean, the question is, how are we going to feed anybody, let alone animals?
The unintended consequences.
Yeah, feeding humans might be, or it might turn out that, you know what, maybe
paste for everybody.
It could turn out that making healthy dirt's really easy. Like maybe it just practically does it all by itself. Like there's stuff like that too. Like there's the idea that because it happened, it must not be that hard for it to happen. That's like another philosophy. It's got some sort of fancy name. I can just never remember what it is. But you could make an argument. Maybe go to Mars and you give it the air, put enough oxygen in the air and whatnot, and dirt just happens. The worms are happy and they start pooping, and it just goes.
I think the more we learn, the more it seems that we're not special. So,
Right.
There could be likelihood there.
I think it's the exact opposite, actually.
Really? I think we're not. I think most things on Earth, I mean, we might be special, but like in general, life is probably more resilient and more likely than we realize it is.
Well, I guess that is an interesting angle. Like Earth has been through 5 global extinction events, and life always comes. In fact, even before humanity started our industrialization process, Earth was actually in a huge mass extinction process already. Mainly due to the fact that there's a continent at the South Pole, which means we get ice ages. That creates an extinction scenario, and we're in an extinction loop right now because of that. But yeah, life comes back, and actually, every time Pangea forms on Earth, like every time the continents bounce back and forth around the globe, and every time they form Pangea, it creates a global desert because you just can't get rain across the whole continent, and all land-based life on Earth dies every time that happens. I mean, not all, but the vast majority of land-based life on Earth dies. And then it all comes back. It's amazing. Of course, when you think about it like on a global scale, if you take a basketball and wrap a basketball in a sheet of paper, that's the atmosphere on Earth. Like so our entire world and everything that we think of as life and the living globe and whatnot is a sheet of paper, the thickness of a sheet of paper wrapped around a basketball. So as far as the universe is concerned, we're sort of just some unfortunate pond scum that happens to be growing on this one planet. You know, it's a little bit too wet. You know, it's like someone didn't dry off the Earth properly, and look, I grew that green shit all over it.
Got that mold on it.
Wipe that stuff off. You know, get rid of that crap.
Well, if we think about seeding,
that's like everything for us. We're just pond scum on a slightly moist ball of dirt. You know,
I mean, if the Earth is actually a seed, then we're the catalyst to move other species out to other planets. Like taking animals with us is would be a big part of that process, I would think.
Oh yeah, and I think
that would make that more resilient.
I think back around to what Jenny was saying is that we probably have to bring the whole thing because we don't know enough about. And the other neat thing too is like the situations that are occurring now aren't always the situations that occur. Like for example, it might happen that like in 100 years from now, a certain virus outbreak happens, and there's this recessive gene that some people have that is actually the thing that protects you against the virus. You know, there's so much stuff like that in our DNA that's protections against diseases that no longer exist. You know, or scenarios that no longer exist. But should that scenario arise, that would be very useful to have. So we don't even know what animals we might need, you know, or what genetic diversity we might need in the situations that we hit. So bringing the most diversity that we can would probably be the way to go. Like just bringing the whole kit and caboodle, you know.
I want to be on the starship that has the elephants on it.
Right.
You bring baby elephants, Jen, or embryos.
Okay.
That's actually an interesting thing with Noah's Ark is that it's actually pretty easy to fit all the animals' existence on Noah's Ark if you just bring babies. That's why people like, how'd you feel the animals? Like they brought babies, you know?
How'd you time that? That's a huge timing problem.
Yeah, no kidding.
You animals need to get busy right now.
Imagine the zoo you had to have, you know, to be able to get the right babies at the right time.
You're the person that goes around and makes the animals procreate at the right time, so then you'll have the babies at the right time.
You're the guy with that big, long glove, you know, that's got to do the work.
Oh.
Get to work, wildebeests.
This is the where the rubber meets the road when it comes to terraforming.
Exactly. It's all just a project management problem. Like, we just need a spreadsheet with animal types, gestation periods.
Yeah.
We can work this out.
Someone's got a little bit of artificial insemination's got to go on. It's no big deal.
Yep.
You do wonder though, like that sort of scenario, like obviously there's a nature versus nurture aspect to everything. So we barely understand nature versus nurture now as it exists as well. So obviously we'd have to understand, like, if we did only bring embryos, how do we raise everything without mothers and fathers? You know, like there'd be things they wouldn't learn.
I came up against this in writing Building New Canaan because I had Martin raising blue whales. And then I thought, well, what happens when they're actually born? And then I read that blue whales suckle for 6 months. So you have baby blue whales, but he's got no mother whales. He's only got the babies. So he's got to create these huge amounts of whale milk and suckle these massive beasts and teach them how to be whales too. Yeah. Because
that is not a small problem.
That's not a small problem.
It's like one of the things we never mentioned is like, here's Martin's beach house over here. You know, it's all nice and quaint by the cliffside. Around the corner is the milk production factory. It's just out of sight because it's kind of unseemly, but it's like the size of a small city. You know, it's constantly pumping milk down to the blue whales.
Yeah.
You never think about that milk production factory, but it's there. It's, you know, robot powered, making milk. That's where we've landed. Blue whales.
Nature is complicated, man.
It is. Silly nature. Luckily, we have our flying bird overlords that will, machine overlords that will keep everything safe for us. Did you see that, Jen? The flying robot bird? Oh, there's a video of it on the fan group.
I didn't. I don't want to know.
It's gorgeous. You'd love it. You'd want this flying robot bird.
I guess I missed that. I didn't see it.
What?
I don't want robot overlords. I don't care if they're bird shaped.
Why not? They're going to maintain us in whatever fashion we want. It's going to be amazing.
So we're going to turn into the pets. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
I would love to be a pet.
Not have to worry about anything.
Yeah. What the hell?
I guess the only thing that would change is someone else would be taking care of me, like making sure I'm fed. And
everyone's always happy to see you. They want to cuddle.
Wait, am I already a pet? I feel like I might already be a pet.
You're your pet's pet. That's how the pets are going to view it too. You know, eventually they're going to become sentient, and they'll be like, "Yeah, we used the humans to just get us into space. You know, we made them do all the work. You know, they built all the spaceships and built civilization and whatnot. We just had to hang out."
Cats rule the household already, don't they? Cats
do,
get people to open doors for them. You know, we clean up their poop. We let them scratch. You know, cats already
evolutionary advantage that they have manipulated us to do these things for them.
That's because cats have the cat face triggers the exact same emotional response that humans is looking at a baby.
Yeah,
it's because it's so little.
Yeah, see, little. That's why Mr. Fizzlepop says humans can't resist the fluffy face.
Constantly showing each other pictures of cats too.
Yes, we
it's
are.
Like, look at this.
The cats are like, why are they watching cat porn all the time? This is weird. This is like some sort of strange interspecies thing. That's what's going on. I do feel like there does need to be a story where the animals take over in Aeon 14. They're just like, screw this.
They all get together and steal a starship. Crash is like, I know how. Let's do it.
I know. Well, let's do it.
Yeah,
I mean, you think about like AI and animals especially. Like, what if they got it figured out better than humans do.
I mean, in some respects, Crash kind of did that with an AI already. Crash and an AI stole Starship.
That's literally what I just said.
Oh, I was coughing. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
I was also saying, Michael, before we started recording, you were talking about how a big difference between humans and animals is our goals.
I did say that. That was insightful, wasn't it?
That was super insightful. So let's go back to that. and elaborate on it a little bit. So are you saying that one has goals and the other doesn't, or that the goals they take different forms?
I think they take different forms. Like humans are, I mean, I guess at a really super basic level, everything just wants to control the future well enough to ensure that there's some level of comfort and ease in the future. That's why we farm and grow food, in advance. That's why we have houses. That's, everything we do is to create some sort of certainty for the future. And I would argue that most animals also do this. They save food for the winter. A lot of animals will try to live in a place where they can survive longer, where there's water and more access to food. And if they don't have it, they'll move to a place where there is water and access to food. So I think at that level, everybody sort of has a basic existence level of survival. But I do feel like we don't know for sure what animals really want out of life. Like humans, we have a need to create and understand. And like Jenny mentioned, humans actually like to spend time with other creatures. And most animals don't have a desire to spend time with other creatures, not the same way we do, at least. I mean, there's stories we do, but
we don't really know yet. Some of it, we can observe their actions, but we don't know what their real thoughts are about that.
Yeah, that's true. We don't. Yeah, maybe they're all xenophobic. Who knows? Like what it is?
They're all racist.
Yeah,
we're surrounded by racist animals.
That's racist. Race is a subcategory of subspecies. There's species, subspecies, then race. So they're species.
They're
maybe speciest is what they are.
They've been fighting a religious battle for billions of years.
It's the tigers in North Africa and the tigers in South Africa. Those guys are racist against each other. That's actually a terrible example. Someone's going to read something into that I did not mean. I was just thinking of a place where there's tigers that are the same species. I apologize.
But I think that's a big, as we generate more data and have better ways to observe and interact, we're going to learn more things about what animals do. That's why I think that it's this hugely untapped resource that we kind of take for granted right now that is out there.
This came to mind actually thinking about the way you wrote Crash, because you wrote Crash where he's like I'm starting to think human thoughts and think of things in human context, where things. And it's even just the words and the concepts we wrap around things, and you find this too, like every now and then you'll go through these perception shifts in life where you saw something one way, like it can be a room. And then at some point you'll see that room in a completely different way and it looks like a foreign room, but it was the exact same room. You just shifted your perception to see it a different way. And I suspect that for animals, probably everything is like that, where we're going to look at a thing, we're going to see counters where I put stuff on, we're going to see the floor where I walk, we're going to see this is where things are safe, this is where things are not safe. This is where I store things. This is where things don't get stored. We have all these sort of perceptions that we put on our surroundings, and then our desires are based on, well, I have to keep the counter clean because I want to put something there to cook. The cat's like, I want to lay there on the counter because the sun's there right now. It's warm, so that's where I'm going to be. I'm going to be on the stove because the oven's on. And it's warm. And we have even our basic what is safe, what is places where things can be and can't be is very different from them. So I sort of assume that many of their goals are different too,
Yeah.
Like a cat's goal is I want to find a safe place to sleep my 21 hours a day, type of thing that they have going on.
Well, I think of systems of hierarchy and dominance and, the ways animals, potentially tribe animals versus more collective animals. All those things seem really interesting that would change the way animals might look at something compared to how we do it or how they problem solve, as a group, which humans do to some extent as well. But, how they share information, how they move stories between themselves. All that stuff is fascinating to me.
You make an interesting point there, James, because if you think about it, we've typically domesticated more individualistic animals as pets, but herd animals we don't domesticate that much. Like deer or cat. I mean, we do domesticate them, but not as pets.
They could mutiny.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking they're just livestock, but we don't seem like for example, not all people have cows as pets. Maybe it's just a size issue. You don't want to have a cow in the house because that's a lot of poop.
I was just having the conversation with someone that cows are much more intelligent than we think they are, and I was like, I really haven't been around cows to know, quite honestly. I don't think.
I mean, well, this is how you measure intelligence, because a lot of intelligence has goals. Like when you measure.
Like that story about trying to get a fish to climb a tree and it'll seem stupid because it can't or whatever.
Yeah, it's going to do a terrible job of climbing a tree. Exactly. Yeah.
Or having an elephant climb a tree.
I've also seen cows poop and then turn around and eat their poop. So
I've seen
Well,
dogs do
dogs
that
do
too.
that.
I
So
mean, my dog, yeah.
Yeah, but cows do it cows do it every day, all day. Like that's what they do. That's their jam. Literally, that's jam.
well,
That's all
they're
they do.
maximizing resources. They're smarter than we are. Like, look at that great resource you have right there,
I guess.
full of delicious microbacteria.
What, Jenny?
Yeah, I think you're being prejudiced against cows there. Michael.
I've been covered in cow shit so many times that I do definitely have some prejudice against cows. I used to.
They were just trying to communicate with you, Michael.
Rabbits eat their poop too.
I think
Rabbit eat their poop, and that's part of their digestive process.
it could be
They
that.
poop it once, they eat it again, and then they poop it the second time. So
I guess,
maybe that's how.
And that's true of cows as well. Like basically, grass is really hard to digest. That's why cows have 4 stomachs and have to chew it like 9,000 times. And when it comes out, a good percentage of it is still just grass. To be honest, like it's just like you look at a cow patty, it's like this thing is like fiber, So yeah, I'm not surprised actually they can probably send that thing through again one more time.
I mean, some stories like I love it. Like one of the things I love about James Tiptree, Alice Sheldon, was she wrote a bunch of stories that were like completely alien, like there's one called Love is the Plan and the Plan is Death. That's like from the perspective of what you kind of start to realize is a giant spider. But just the way that they view reality is so different than ours. And so like you think about that cow eating, its feces over and over again. There could be communication taking place. Like if it eats another cow's feces, like is there a story being told there, and like differences in how they perceive the world based on the temperature and the flavor and those are things that we don't even like. We think about a hamburger telling a story about a place and a restaurant and the person that prepared it, whereas they're telling a story among the herd based on like where they were and what it tasted like and oh, this grass meant a bad winter, and so things are and so all these like ways of perceiving the world. What's that?
Data packets.
Well, basically, yes. And we look at it as being disgusting, and to them it's like, well, no, this is a shared packet of information that I can come back to. Like we come back to the same feeding ground and we can taste what it was like last year.
Taste the rainbow.
Yeah, but it's like, to me, that's like this leap of imagination that I wish I had more time to sit around and think about things like that, because that's kind of fascinating to me. That it's like that lobster that sees 24 colors or something, and so the world is totally different to it than it is to us. I don't know, that kind of stuff. Like, and I think that's another like thing that pets or animals in general would bring to space exploration that we don't necessarily have, and we could try to replicate it with drones and sensors and things of that nature, but they could synthesize that information maybe better than we can, or than we can replicate with AI. Mm-hmm. So that's
the one limited thing too about especially with even our current types of AI and using machines and whatnot, is that they'll never self-improve and find solutions that we did not expect. I mean, it does to a certain extent, that they can find patterns that we didn't see, but it's not going to like find new solutions that we didn't see. Whereas an animal could do that, maybe by accident. But
it can evolve even after the alterations we make to its makeup.
Yeah. Well, I'm also thinking like maybe, I don't know, we have some sort of problem on some planet, and nature is good at balancing. So just more of this particular type of dog starts to breed, and they take care of this rodent problem that we have, with chupacabras, the capybaras. Capybaras and chupacabra, for some reason in my head, mix up. Because the capybara is the world's largest rodent. It's like a small dog-sized rodent, and of course the capybara is like the blood-sucking goat monster.
No, you have it backwards. The chupacabra is the
chupacabra is the blood-sucking monster,
and the capybara is the one that is.
Isn't it a cute little rodent?
Giant turtle.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a cute one. It's a big one.
Did I tell you guys I have a nutria in my backyard right now that's like a giant rodent? Like they came up from South America, and it's been like, it just appeared. It's living in a hedge, and it comes out and it like eats my grass.
You said a tree. You have a giant tree in your backyard.
Well, I have a hedge. Like I have a box hedge.
Okay.
And so it's like the rats and Nim, right? It like runs into the hedge, and that's where it seems to be living, and then it comes out, and it's like a giant rat with a walrus face, because it's got these huge.
That might be a muskrat.
See, that's the thing. I do live near a river, but it's a good mile away, and so my area is like, Jen, do you have them in Portland? Like down here, they're everywhere.
They're not everywhere here, but they're near water. They're near the rivers and
Well,
stuff.
I guess we just have a lot of creeks all over the place, but yeah, that was the weird thing is I'm relatively far from the river, so it was kind of weird. And now we're like, what do we do about this? And talk about animals eating each
Don't
other's crap.
interact
Like,
with it.
yeah, well, it's kind of a scaredy animal. Like, it's not like I have a possum as well, and the possum just runs away. It doesn't really do anything. But I was kind of worried about the dog with the nutria because it's a good like half size of the dog. Like, I'd say it's probably 8 or 9 pounds of
And they
giant
tend
rat.
to be aggressive by
What?
nature too. The
That's what I've
nutria.
heard.
What's the name of this thing? I can't
Um,
catch it.
A nutria, Nutria.
See, when you said that first, I thought you said you have a new tree in your backyard. I'm like,
Oh,
cool.
no.
That's why I got confused by this whole thing.
Nutria.
So that's like a
Yeah.
muskrat, then, is what it sounds like.
It's
They're
kind
like
of,
a scarier beaver.
yeah, it is. It's very, in fact,
Yeah,
it's not the same genus as beaver, but it looks like a beaver with a rat
It's
tail.
kinda like a beaver
it's a-
with an otter tail.
Yeah, I think everybody else in the world calls those things muskrats.
But they're
Okay.
different than muskrats. They
Are you
came from
sure?
These came from South America. Yeah.
Because muskrats look
wow,
like beavers
this
with rat
garden.
tails.
Okay, so let's not take those into space.
I know those. Well, maybe I don't know. It's like beavers are they're the only other animal that shapes their environment like humans do. So
Yeah, they have the second largest environmental impact next to humans,
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
which is fascinating.
Environment too, because they make their own nests.
Well, it's because they make dams and they flood valleys.
Right, that makes sense.
So they they can change. They can actually change like an ecosystem.
That makes sense. Let's not take them into space either.
What beavers? Beavers are awesome. Gotta take
You
beavers.
just said they impact the ecosystem.
Well, that's why they're smart. We control
That's a
them.
very
You know?
controlled
just-
ecosystem.
we just have Beaver Planet.
We got chips in their heads.
Let them go to work.
Tell them. I mean, actually, I mentioned.
You guys
I
remember
want to
that
mention this.
cartoon, Angry Beavers.
The on the Intrepid, it's actually mentioned that there are ship cats on the Intrepid,
Mhm.
and Bob controls the ship cats.
Nah,
He tells them where to go, and he makes sure they don't poop in conduit and stuff like that. You know,
they
like
listen to Bob.
yeah, they listen to Bob. Bob actually controls all the ship cats.
Bob's
that are all running
cat
around.
army.
Because it was in Path of the Darkness. He was actually using the cats to try and
remember
like
that, yeah.
find the drones.
I honestly think cats will be the first animals in space, and I think they will be ship's cats.
Mhm.
Because
Oh,
when
yeah.
we explored the world, though, we had all those ships that were going to Australia and America. They all had cats to control the rodents.
And frogs, as it turned out, by accident.
It's going to be the same.
Frogs?
Yeah, don't you know about the frog problem in Australia? They accidentally brought frogs to Australia, and frogs are just taken over.
They were in the
Okay.
bilge water.
Cane toad.
I mean,
No,
lots of things.
Cane toads.
Oh, it's toads.
Cane toads. Yeah.
I'm sorry. For me, frogs and toads are one of those things. I'm like, they're like alligators and crocodiles. It's like, okay.
No, frogs are like cute. Frogs are lovely. The cane toads are like these huge, horrible things, and they exude a poisonous mucus on their skin, which means nothing can eat them. The only thing that eats them is in their original country, and I don't know what that is. But they didn't bring that to Australia too.
Licking the toads because of the hallucinogenic properties of the mucus on their.
Yeah, who's licking the toads?
Not
This
me.
is a show. It's a cartoon.
Teenagers trying to get high.
Yeah, I think it was
Who's
Family Guy. They had characters licking the toads because the mucus that you're talking about exuding on their skin. I think this cartoon went with the hypothesis of what if it's hallucinogenic? What if it's
You know another thing we're not going to bring with us? There are one thing we do have around here that's bad. They're coming up from the south because our winters are getting milder, not killing enough of them. See, winter. Is that these little fuzzy caterpillars? They're white and they're fuzzy and they're adorable. And if you touch them, the pain is like a gunshot wound.
what the hell?
It's considered to be one of the most painful things you can do is to touch one of these caterpillars. It's like you've been shot. And then the other thing that it does, I want to make sure so there's those that we have. And then we also have a plant called giant hogweed. And it kind of looks like Queen Anne's lace. But if you touch giant hogweed and you get its oil on your body, it removes your body's ability to block UV for 7 years. So basically, like sitting in front of a window will give you the worst sunburn ever.
Wow.
Oh my
I've-
god!
Yeah, so
I've
we
never
got-
heard of
those
giant
things aren't coming
hogweed.
with us.
Do we need to import hogs then to eat the giant hogweed?
I don't. Yeah, maybe. But like it's pretty like Queen Anne's lace looks right. It's these nice little flowers. And there you go. The giant hogweed ones are like 7 feet tall, and you see those.
Okay.
Do not go anywhere near these things. Yeah, you're like basically live in agony for 7 years.
My God.
You have that.
You become a vampire.
And of course, you got those. What was that, Jenny?
I was just going to say this is going to be a serious problem if we do take life to planets where there is no life. We're going to face massive problems with things not being in balance.
Yeah,
because we don't understand how they're in balance.
Species all the time.
There are those things that are happening in Australia where they took those invasive species to Australia. It's going to be like Australia, but in a planet-sized.
Yeah.
The other thing too that I think sometimes is kind of neat is like, for example, this is like one of my. I always get a bee in my bonnet about this. People talk about the fact that the honeybee going extinct is going to wipe out all life on Earth, and it's going to be the end of the universe, and that drives me nuts because honeybees are not native to North America. So somehow life survived on North America before bees showed up. So there are times when you make these changes and it actually doesn't seem to really cause that much of a difference at all. Although the funny thing is that if you remove the change, you might cause more problems.
Well, I think it all comes back to data, right? We have bad time orientation. We can't look at things over time, and we don't have the data to know what works or doesn't work. You know, and
as it turns out, really what happens is the wind will actually do 40% of the pollination on its own.
Maybe.
So there are these fun balances in there. On the flip side, though, our commercial crops need honeybees because we grow so many commercial crops now that without honeybees, the wind wouldn't work well enough to pollinate them all. But life would be fine. You know,
I like honeybees.
Humans are not native to North America either. So, just because
valid point.
We brought the honeybees to sustain human life by pollinating the crops that we eat.
Such a funny way to think of that. Humans are not native to North America.
True.
I guess, we're really
not native to Europe either.
I know, we're native to a valley in Africa, and that's it.
Yeah. That's the only place that we survive in within the web of nature, within the ecological web, is in our original. Everywhere else we're invasive.
Wow.
Deep thoughts from Jenny.
Well, I think that's the hard thing to define what invasive means. You know, we've created a snapshot in time. I mean, all we can do is take a look at how things have changed, right? But there's no snapshot of whatever a billion years ago that everything was like the way it should be. That's the thing about the Earth. Like just even mentioning like the idea of Pangea. Everything is in flux. What's that?
Only 60,000 years ago.
For humans.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's
humans had a big impact even in Australia. They changed the ecology of Australia so that because the Aborigines were burning the bushes, the bush, the trees have evolved that they cannot germinate the seeds. Not all the trees, certain species. They can't germinate unless they've been through a wildfire. So you have to have. We've altered the environment all around the world, really.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, as technology converges and more people move into urban spaces, like I do think, like in my vision of things, that we end up living like more compacted. Like most people live in cities, and so more spaces on the Earth return to, some sort of natural equilibrium or natural state. It's going to take 500 years to get there, but I think that's going to happen. And then if anything, like farming areas will be run by drones out in the middle.
I think you could actually look at Canada as a great example of that. Canada has a population of about 35 million people, and if you count Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver, and you count their metropolitan areas, that's 2/3 the population of the country is in 3 cities.
Yeah,
and the rest of Canada is basically uninhabited. And mostly it's all farming and resource operations that are run by small groups of people that operate pretty efficiently. Like they have automatic combines now.
There's a huge disruption happening in farming. as we get more micro, drones that have the ability to do farming.
Mhm.
That's going to happen in the next 20 years. Like the cost involved in buying those giant combines had meant, I think, that large corporations have to do the farming, but it's getting cheaper and cheaper to, where you can farm almost anywhere with a small, like, lawnmower sized robot that, can almost on an individual basis look at a strawberry, tell if it's ripe, and then pick it or not pick it, or do whatever needs to be done to the strawberry.
Yeah.
So
I do.
go ahead.
I was going to mention that you made a point, James. I want to reiterate, and that is something I think people need to think about. Is a lot of people look at the natural world and say, well, we've ruined the natural world and we've changed it. There's two parts of that. Humans are not extra natural. We are actually a part of the natural world. And just like a beaver's dam is a part of a natural world, a skyscraper is part of the natural world. It's not like we didn't like summon matter from another universe. We took resources from our planet and we turned them into a skyscraper. So you could actually argue that a planet growing skyscrapers is the natural evolution of a planet. And it's just what it does. Because humans are part of nature. Like everything that we do is part of nature. We're not above nature, beyond nature. We're not extra universal.
Well, I think that's the problem, though. We often do think we're above nature, and we don't look at what the unintended consequences are of, concentrating certain chemicals or materials or changing the landscape. But that's the thing. Like, I always come back to, we just don't know. Like, our knowledge horizon is so short right now that we don't know the impact of these kind of things. It's like a solar farm seems like an awesome idea, but what's the unintended consequences of concentrating that much, like, heat in one place? Or what's going to happen underneath the solar panels when we do that? Or
you get some really fun mold that will grow if you make a really big solar farm.
Yeah, and so all that stuff we just don't know, and it's like we're constantly sort of like creeping forward. We do certain things because we want to, like take pets with us into grocery stores, but we don't know 25 years from now, until there's like a listeria outbreak or something, what that really, the effect of that is.
Yeah.
So,
but the flip side of that, though, is like you're saying as well, is that there's no like point where the Earth was like, this was perfect Earth, where like if Earth could stay like this forever, that would be the goal of Earth, because that's not what nature is for. That's not what the universe is trying to do. The universe itself is a change engine, and it's always changing. And so the fact that there was never a point, there never will be a point where the Earth is like a snap, like you're saying, a snapshot where this is the perfect time, and if we could just maintain that forever. Because of course, what we know is that with a system with cyclical aspects, it's not possible to have a stasis. You can't actually freeze it in time and have it be the same forever.
But we might not survive either. Like the system might chew us up if we don't.
That's fine. I mean, for humans to think that we can exist forever.
We could revert back to just living in Africa quite easily, I think.
Yeah, but we're not very resilient if that's the case. The species is not very resilient.
Yeah, we've only been here such a short amount of time. Things like cockroaches, they're resilient. But
I know, but for us, our resiliency is in redundancy. And by spreading. But also on the flip side, people always talk about they lament the world. I'm like, you know what? In 1 billion years, you won't even be able to tell the humans we're here. The Earth will be covered in animals and plants, and it'll be just fine. And that's pretty much a guarantee that the Earth will be here in 1 billion years, and it'll be covered in life.
Life will continue. We may not, but life will.
Well, yeah, our chances of making
Jen is looking very sad right now.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at my phone. I'm gonna have to leave.
We should wrap up anyway, actually. So,
well, this has been a really fun conversation. There's a lot of things tied together with this idea that could be probably teased out in other conversations. But yeah, I don't know. I appreciate everybody taking the time to think about it. We've been changing the schedule a little bit, so I think we're definitely wanting to talk when we have good things to talk about. So we will keep everyone informed on when there's going to be a next episode. I think it's kind of averaging out to maybe 2 a month. That seems fair. Something like that. So, but we're also have talked about doing more sort of one-on-one interviews. So look for those kind of things that come up as well. And we'll definitely keep you informed in the Facebook group. And there's also the Reddit subreddit you can check out. But that's Aeon 14 Fans on Facebook. And that's where you can find the most up-to-date info on the release schedule, the updated Aeon 14 reading guide. And if you ever have questions about anything with the series, you can always jump in there and ask. And somebody will get back as soon as we can. So until then, thank you for listening, and we will see you on the Intrepid. Later.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.